Police officers of Reddit, what was your oh it moment? I pulled up on a teen sleeping in a vehicle at the end of a country road. When I ran the license plate, I found out that he was reported as a runaway. The doors on the vehicle were locked, so I knocked on the window to wake him up. Once he woke up and realized what was going on, he shot himself in the mouth with a rifle he had hidden under his blanket. Rough way to start my shift. We were looking for a guy who stole gums from his ex and found him under a pile of clothes in a closet at a different house. Unfortunately there was like 7 kids sleeping in the same room, so I start getting them out of there while my partner cuffs the guy who is pretending to sleep. We decide to drag him out and I go to move the mattress to get it out of the way, and we find the stolen gums under where the kids were sleeping. My husband has been a police officer for over 20 years. One night he was patrolling the downtown area when he noticed a purse someone had left behind. He opened the bag to check for it and found a turd. Some lady took a bigger sheet in her handbag and left it behind. He'll talk about autopsies and burnt bodies, but that is the one story he would rather forget. Edit, thank you for the gold and silver. I'm so happy my husband's story made so many of you laugh. A law prof in Australia spent 20 years as a cop before becoming a lawyer and eventually teaching. In explaining the battered wife syndrome defense to Med-Dare, he told a story of a call to little old lady's house where she had said on the phone that she had killed her husband. Before this incident, he didn't really understand why it existed. Why doesn't the woman just leave? Why doesn't she just go to someone else's house? Prof shows up to the door and is greeted by a little old lady saying, "Come in. Would you like some tea?" He goes in and she starts putting some cakes on a tray and pouring tea. He wonders if she's all there. He asked, "So you said that you held your husband on the phone. Would I be able to see him?" She directs him to the living room where the old man was on a lazy boy chair, bottle in hand, and a tomahawk in his skull. Meanwhile, old lady is asking if he takes sugar or milk in his tea. The prof said at this moment he realized why the defense of battered wife existed. The drunk old guy had been beating her for years, controlled all the money and didn't let her have friends. She had nowhere to go even if she left him. So on this day, after saying he was going to beat her if his sports team lost, she took matters into her own hands. He said this was the moment he realized that sometimes there are situations where life doesn't make sense and people take the only way they can see. I'm not a cop, but my younger brother is. On his first night out of field training. So the first night he's not riding with an instructor, him and his equally new partner were heading back to the station at the end of the night around 2 AM. He's driving down a major street and there are 2 subs hauling as the other direction. All of a sudden someone leans out the rear window of the second vehicle and starts firing rounds from a rifle at his car heading opposite direction. Naturally they flip around and give chase, and call it out on the radio. He said it was either the fact that his partner was screaming his head off into the radio, or the fact that it was the 2 rookies getting shot at. But the entire city's police force came down on them in about 2 minutes. They ended up catching both vehicles. Turns out it was some sort of dispute at a bar between the occupants of the subs. Vehicle 2 was chasing Vehicle 1. Saw the cops, who had no idea about any of it, coming the other way and decided to take it up a couple notches. Does it count if it was my dad? Mom took me and my siblings to the doctor one day. Turned off her sellers per doctor's office policy back then. Fast forward a few hours. We pull up to our house and there's a cop car waiting for us in the driveway, not my dad's. Anyone with family in law enforcement knows having a cop at your door that isn't your loved one is something you never want to experience. Long story short, my dad's flashbang malfunctioned and detonated in his pocket during a call out. He was SWAT. Definitely an oh-sheet moment for him and everyone in the back of that van. He very nearly bled out and they couldn't get a hold of my mom. She swears the whole department was in that waiting room when we got there. And my dad lived to tell the tale. Love him. Edit. Sorry to do the cheesy after post edit, but I had to say thank you to everyone for all the kind words. You didn't have to take time to say nice things about my dad, but you did and it seriously means so much. Thanks for existing, friends. As a rookie, I was responding to an alarm at restaurant that was supposed to be haunted by a woman. The first officer that arrived was an older officer that didn't do much and didn't ever get excited on the radio. As soon as he arrived, he asked for a second unit in a high-pitched tone. As I pulled in, he had his shotgun out and he was leaned up over his hood. My first thought was, oh shit, someone is breaking in. When I ran up to him and asked what up, all he said was as he pulled up and his lights hit the building, a woman jumped off the roof and disappeared. He was clearly shook. Me and another officer checked the building and found no evidence that someone had been there. It made an impression on me and I never went back to the restaurant at night without another officer. Not myself personally, but my father. I've heard this story hundreds of times over the years and this seems like the perfect time to share it. My father was a Miami-Dade County sheriff in the 80s. One of the first rookies pulled from the academy straight to Miami. All the time he tells me how police officers are all control freaks. His oh shit moment was when he lost control. On his way home from a shift one day, he overheard a call on the radio about a convenience store robbery right near where he was. He radioed in and said he'd check it out as he was still in uniform. Still had shirt, pants and badge. But gun belt had been removed. As he searched the streets, he spotted a vehicle matching the description and proceeded to call it in and throw on his lights to pull them over. As he pulled them over, two kids got out and ran. The driver stayed behind. With no gun belt on, my father proceeded out of his cruiser and holstered his weapon in his waistband. He then took the driver out of their car and moved them to the hood of his. As he searched the driver over his hood, he said he felt the moment happen. The driver started to swing his arm around and proceeded to elbow my father in the face. He lost all control. Oh shit. They wrestled to the ground where eventually my father's weapon was knocked loose. The driver proceeded to pick up the weapon and shoot my father point blank in the lung with his own weapon. The driver escaped, but only for a brief period of time, and my father was blessed to have one of the top GSW doctors surgeons in the country doing a seminar about 20 minutes away on the same day. He lives to tell the tale today, and I'm pretty sure the pose who shot him just got released last year. I was a rookie cop in a small town. I was driving to check on a report of a large group of kids causing a disturbance at a school parking lot late at night. I realized I had not tested my PA speaker, which I planned on using to disperse the crowd. On my way to the call, slowly rolling down a residential street at 2 AM with my windows down, I decide to tap my PA mic a couple times to check it. First 2 taps. Can't tell if it's working. I slow down. I tap the mic several more times. Definitely hear the loudspeakers that time. At that moment, I hear, "What the duck are you doing?" I look out my passenger window and see this old dude sitting on his porch in his underwear, looking pissed. Our eyes locked. I realized I had no decent excuse for clicking my loudspeaker in a quiet neighborhood in the middle of the night. So I didn't say anything back to him and I floored it up the road. Definitely an oh shit moment at the time. Maybe different than what OP is looking for, but I get tired of traditional war stories. The awkward on this encounter was through the roof. Got a call for a emotionally disturbed person. Arrive on scene and a 350-pound man built like an NFL lineman is passed out on the floor face down. His wife says he suffers from PTSD from the first Iraq war and that he was an army ranger. He had been drinking heavily. His son is on scene and about 16 years old. The man begins to wake up and proceeds to smash his forehead into the ground repeatedly. We call for an ambulance. A small pool of blood begins to form on the floor. The wife grabs a rag and goes to wipe it up when this guy's head jerks up real quick. His face contorted in rage. He grabs the wife by the neck and throws her clear across the room onto the couch. We immediately jump on him, but he is preternaturally strong. There are 4 of us and we are each fighting one limb. The kid jumps in and helps us get 2 sets of cuffs on him because one set was not wide enough to connect his wrists behind his back. I ride in the ambulance to the hospital with him while he glares at me angrily, reciting his military registration number and telling me I won't get any information out of him and that I'm a towelhead. I don't remotely look like I'm from the region. The entire ride I hope that he doesn't break out of the cuffs. If I'm being honest, I'm not sure we would have gained control of him if the kid hadn't helped. Former MP here. Partner and I were riding around when we saw another unit dip into a weapons storage area. Figured, hey, let's see what they're up to. Rolled up to the gate and the guard says, you guys here for the GOM leak? I'm sorry. What? We are now. Hit the gas and went rolling in to find the fire department and all their investigating. Had to evacuate the entire weapons area. Most of the supply area across the street as well as most of the flight line. Something like a 3,000 meter cordon. That was a fun day. Ended up just being sealant for anyone interested in the outcome. Responded to a domestic, and when I showed up I heard a lot of yelling and banging. A friend of the family was standing outside screaming for help. I saw my backup down the block, so I decided to run in on my own, figuring head right behind me. I saw two older siblings, brother and sister, practically choking each other out while a younger sister tried to jump over the older sister and stab the brother with a knife. I didn't see the knife until I was right next to them, and when I did see it, my first reaction was to grab the younger sister by the wrist, slam her arm into the wall to knock the knife out and throw her to the ground. I then held her with my left hand as I elbowed the big sister in the face to separate her from the brother. The brother then came at me and I ended up punching him in the sternum, which sent him to the ground. He landed next to the knife and looked at it as though he was gonna grab it. I drew down on him and told him not to move. All four of us then looked each other in silence for what felt like a minute before that officer who was down the block ran in. First words out of his mouth were, "I ran into the wrong apartment." It was a solid oh shit moment up until then though. Was a police intern. Maybe about my second month in. I got to ride around and help with traffic stops and basically just help the officer on duty. Fairly small town. Nothing ever really happened there, mostly just drunks and domestic calls. One afternoon I was with a cop new to the force. Fresh from working in the prison. Great guy. Anyhow, we are running a speed check on the outskirts of town and find a guy on a motorcycle speeding with no helmet, illegal at the time. Hit the lights. Pulls over with no incident. We get out. Guy doesn't even turn around. Barely answers the questions through his teeth. Back to the cruiser and run his license. Comes back with several out-of-state warrants with a bowler attached due to an armed assault against a police officer. We both looked at each other and back at the dude on the motorcycle. Officer immediately unlatches the shotgun from the center console and hands it to me. "If you know how to use this thing, use it," was all he said. Oh shit, without notice. Other officers from surrounding towns are already lining up behind us. Thank God. Dude was thankfully tired of being on the run and was ready to turn himself in. He went in without incident. Was on a traffic stop. My sergeant came and backed me up due to having to possibly tow the vehicle. My sergeant's vehicle was behind mine and we were both in the right lane. My sergeant was sitting in his car and I exited my car to go talk to him. As I walked closer to his car I heard a vehicle's engine rev all the way out, but I couldn't see it. For a split second I knew what was going to happen and oh shit, but couldn't react fast enough. The vehicle I heard smashed into the back of my sergeant's SUV, which struck me, throwing me into the road. The driver was completely hammered and didn't have a license. This happened last Sunday and I have surgery in a couple weeks for my knee and my sergeant has a broken back. Nothing makes you go oh shit more than stopping an obvious drunk. Feeling like you could be stopping a homicide in progress. To realizing you know the person. Maybe you know them really well. When I was responding to a simple trespass after warning call and upon me making contact with the trespassed individual, he charged myself and my zone partner with a pair of scissors. Not a cop, but to any cop that reads the "thanks for all you do." It's a job that gets to you physically and emotionally and people treat you like shit and that is so wrong. I respect anyone that gets so much hate for helping and still continues to do it. Not me. But my friend is a cop. He pulled up to accident scene once involving a motorcycle. Gets out of his car. Starts walking over and sees the guy's helmet. Figures he'll be nice and bring it over to the guy. Well, as it turns out, The guy was still in the helmet. Worked with a guy who used to work for Long Beach PD. Told me a story about a call coming in that some old man had threatened his neighbor for knocking down his fence. Friend gets on scene a little late and 2 other units had already showed up. Friend sees crazy old guy cuffed and in the back of one of the cars already. He thinks okay, these guys got this, and just wants to make sure the first units are okay. He walks up to one of the cops and notices that he has that so sheet look on his face. Cop says to friend, come with me, you have to see this sheet. My friend follows the other officer into crazy old guy's garage through the house. His exact words when he told me this story was, it was like that scene in Boondock Saints where they buy the guns. The crazy old man apparently had been stockpiling weapons for the last 20 years. Multiple rifles, shotguns, pipe bombs, Semtex, various pistols, and the throne. A gas-powered lawnmower that had 2 M60s mounted on it. Controls for both weapons. Ammo cans etc. I'm not sure what else was on the throne lol. We happened to be right on top of the scene when a carjacking with a gun call went out. I saw the car fishtailing in the snow half a block away. We started to chase. And the driver bailed immediately in the driveway of an apartment. I chased him up a hill while my partner and around the building to cut him off. Just as I crested the hill, a shot rang out. He fired blindly behind him. The old to whom it may concern shot. We chased him through a church parking lot where the bingo game was just letting out. So no return fire. Caught him in a backyard behind the church. The department gave us nice plaques. And cake. When I was a corrections officer, I got assigned to shadow an experienced officer until an FTO would be available to train me. It didn't take me long to find out that this CO was highly unpopular among the inmates. My moment was when we went into a 50-man dorm to do a roster bed check. And there was absolute silence in the dorm. And I could feel the hair standing on the back of my neck. The inmates were intently staring at the officer I was shadowing. He was oblivious to it. While I was straight up in fight or flight mode. Never experienced that in a dorm after that. I feel like something serious was potentially going to go down that night. 2 on 50 is not good odds. I couldn't have been happier when I didn't have to shadow that guy anymore. Not me, but my grandpa was on the California Highway Patrol for 20 years. He always told the story of how he pulled over this guy for a busted taillight. My grandpa asks him for his license and registration. And the guy says, "How'd you catch me so fast?" Grandpa said the hair on the back of his neck never again stood up half so fast. Turned out the guy had robbed a bank not 5 minutes before. I was running a road crew cleanup one day. And I had 8 state inmates. And one of them picks up a loaded .38 and starts walking back towards the van. I see the gun in his hand. And say, "Oh duck, they fixing to shoot my ass." I made a cell phone call. And left it on speaker. And told the inmates to place it on the ground and back up. He said, "Boss, I ain't gonna shoot ya. You too good to all of us." And he handed me the gun. We all loaded up and went back to the prison. I'm retired from the state of Florida Depth of Corrections. Ex-cop from NSW Australian here. A guy once died in a motorcycle accident. We went to deliver the death message to his girlfriend. After reading the collision report, the truck driver said he just pulled straight in front of him like a deliberate suicide. She was not answering, so we forced entry. The shelves of the fridge were on the kitchen floor. Opening the fridge, we discovered multiple pillowcases with her cut up body inside. That was certainly an oh shit moment.